Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this TSJW Network production. I am Trellis Williams, and today we have a big announcement heavily impacting the homeschool sports world in Mississippi. Over the weekend, we found out that the National Federation of High School Sports, which is the NFHS, had a ruling that the MSAHA schools, which is the organization primarily consisting of the public schools of Mississippi, are able to now compete with homeschool organizations. This roadblock for homeschool sports has been lifted. And what does this mean? Well, joining us today, we have the head coach of the Hattiesburg Forerunners track and cross-country teams, and also board member of the MSAHA, the Homeschool Basketball League, Robert Pickering. And thank you, Coach, for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so this was a decision that had kind of been long awaited in the Mississippi homeschool sports community. I know when I was playing, I would have loved for this decision to have been made at that point in time. Of course, I got plenty of good competition, but I was definitely looking out for that for sure, and this is big. A lot of our viewers are hearing about this for the first time. So I know that there were details about what actually just happened, and if you could take us through the details, what exactly was the ruling on this?
Well, there's actually two rulings that took place, and this has been a process going on for literally over a 10-year process. I got involved about 6 or 7 years ago myself, and there were some predecessors, former coaches that had started this process prior to my involvement. But the first ruling was back in the spring of this year. The MHSAA Executive Board in a meeting, they voted to allow their members to compete against members of the Mid-South Association of Homeschool Athletics members if we were able to obtain affiliate membership into the National Federation of High Schools. NFHS sanctions one entity per state, which is Mississippi High School Activities Association, and that's all they sanction per state. And so at MAIS, with all the private schools, this is the same exact way that they are able to compete against the public schools is through an affiliate membership through the National Federation of High School. So they gave us as an association their blessing back in the spring if we could obtain this. So we started the process of applying and putting our packet of information together. So we submitted that back in May for the July meeting, which they met the first week of July. And at that meeting of the National Federation of High School, they voted to approve us for an affiliate membership as Mid-South Association of Homeschool Athletics. So now any member of our association is able to compete against MHSAA schools, MAIS schools, whoever is willing to compete against us. Now, the one caveat to that, that ruling from the Mississippi High School Activities Association was they would allow their members to participate or compete against homeschool athletics if they so choose. So they said they were very, specific. They would not force their members to compete, but if their members chose to compete, they could.
Yeah, that's a big thing right there, and this will obviously impact all homeschool sports and open up further opportunities for competition for our organizations. But this had posed a very special challenge to the cross-country and track communities and especially cross-country. I just remember this even went back to 10 years ago. I know you were talking about this being a 10-year process. The Forerunners being at a meet where there were public schools, and they shot two guns to start two different things, and the Forerunners boys, like a couple of them were placed in the top 5, and they weren't even recognized because they weren't a part of the actual competition, and so that is a big thing, big change here, especially for that, and that's your area of coaching here. Just speak to the impact that this will make on the homeschool track and cross country seasons.
Like you said, this is a huge impact for those two sports. Not to diminish it for any other sports, but when you think about basketball, baseball, volleyball, softball, any of the other team sports, it's just that it's a team sport that you bring two teams together and they can compete. So you bring two homeschool teams together. You bring a homeschool and a private school, whoever. You can have a game or a meet or a match or whatever. But when it comes to cross country and track, but especially cross country, it takes 10, and you may have up to 30 plus teams show up for a cross-country race. And with the old system, if one member of MHSAA showed up at a private school meet or at a home, and was competing, then they would have to have a completely separate race for the homeschool athletes. And for the last several years, we've only had initially we had 3, then we had 5 or 6. Now we're up to almost 11 homeschool cross-country teams across the state. So the numbers have grown. So it's not as severe as it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever we only have 3 or 5 or 6 teams out there. But when you're running a 5 mile or 3 mile race, a 5K, but a 3 mile race, then as you stretch out, the kids wind up running by themselves. And that's not enjoyable because you're not racing someone. You don't have someone there close by you. But now that we're able to compete in the larger races, instead of having 30 or 40 kids start a race, now we're going to be involved in races that start 100 to 200 kids in one race. And so regardless of what your running ability is, you're going to have people around you, people that you can run with throughout the entire race, people you can race with for the entire race, instead of basically feeling like you're on a training run all you by yourself. And the same thing with track. Track typically is 10 to 18 or 20 teams at a track meet. And so it's the same situation. If a public school was at a private school meet, then we were not allowed to participate in that meet. So it became difficult to find a full schedule of meets we could attend, because typically your private schools, public schools intermingle in a lot of their track meets. So this new ruling really opens up competition for everyone to fill out their schedules, to have someone at every ability level on a cross-country course to run and compete with, and it will elevate competition across the board, in my opinion.
As I had discussed this process with people a couple months ago when I first heard about it, the big question, the biggest pushback question I heard was, are there any strings attached? And so what I want to ask you is if there's anything in terms of our rules and our bylaws of being the MSAHA, is there any effect? Is there any change there?
No, there are no strings as far as that's concerned. That was one of the big things. In the packet of information we had to submit to the National Federation, we had a copy of our bylaws, of our sports-specific rule packages. So it was all laid out before then of how we operate. And the Mid-South Association Homeschool Athletic Board, we took great steps and tried to look at the National Federation rules and guidelines and competition rules when we were putting our bylaws together, when we were putting our rules of competition together. So we would be as close to compliant to their competition rules as we could be on the front end. So when it comes to changing rules, changing bylaws, there was none of that, because there again, we are not competing in their division. We're not competing in their association. We're just competing against them during the regular season. Once we get down to district and regional plays, South State, none of that applies. We're not in any of those things. We're just simply competing during the regular season. So our rules govern our association, their rules govern their association, and we just strictly are allowed to compete against each other during the regular season. But there's no strings as far as changing the rules, changing bylaws. The biggest thing to keep in mind is the decision did not mandate their teams compete against us. It just says the rule that used to prevent them from playing against us, that rule no longer applies, and they are allowed to compete against us if they so choose.
For sure, and that is good to hear. And so you're very instrumental in this process. You've pushed it along, and therefore you've made a huge and profound impact in homeschool sports history in the state. So when you were pushing to have this be done, you've told us most of your vision, which was you wanted some good. You definitely stood up for your sports. Which were the running sports that definitely helped in those areas for sure. But this affected all the sports across the board, and my specialty is I'm in basketball mostly. I know that'll even affect basketball, not to the same extent that with the running sports, but it will have an effect as well. Overall, what was your vision when you were pushing for this to get done?
My vision really is summed up in one word, and that's fairness. And that's really what I had in the back of my mind when we started this process, where I picked up the mantle to continue pushing it forward. When you look at our nation was founded on freedom and liberty. And one of those primary freedoms was freedom of religion. And when you look at the homeschool world, not all, but the vast majority of homeschool families do that because they want their children to grow up with a biblical worldview, and they want their children to have Bible knowledge and through their education. And that's what drives a lot of families towards the homeschooling environment and world. And because they make that choice to have a Christian worldview, a biblical worldview, they should not be discriminated against or pushed to the side. They should be allowed to have the same opportunity that any other child in this country does when it comes to their high school years, whether it be their education, their sports activities, other activities, whatever it is. In my mind, fairness is, if it's a legally recognized form of education, which homeschooling is, those participants should have full rights to do anything that they're, now, do we have football? No. Why? There's a lot of liability. It's harder to put those kind of sports on. There's some that do, but if there's a way to provide a sport, an opportunity for those homeschool kids, they need that opportunity. And there's no, in my mind, reasonable reason to disqualify them or not allow them to participate. And so for me, at the core, it was about fairness, of allowing the kids an opportunity to compete, not to interfere, but just to compete and to be kids and to be a part of a team and a team sport. And I think in the end, it's going to be better for homeschool sports, for private schools, for public schools. Everyone will be better because you elevate your level of competition.
Absolutely. And Coach, I really do appreciate all you did there, and we're very excited about that, and we're looking forward to seeing how that manifests throughout the first season under this new ruling. But I appreciate you joining us for sure.
Well, thank you for having me on. Thank you for the chance to sort of share a little bit about what transpired, and I'm looking forward to a great year.
For sure, and I hope you viewers, I hope you're able to take a lot from this. I know I did as well. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button right there. Also turn the notifications on so you can see when we post videos. We've got plenty of things coming down the pike in the next few months, and we're looking forward to them for sure. So thank you for joining us. I am Trellis Williams with this TSJW Network production. We out.